In 1920. All right, so now we're actually in the Noble Drew Ali, wrote the Bible, his Quran, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, divinely prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali, by the guiding of his father God Allah, the great God of the universe, to redeem man from his sinful and fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of life, his father God Allah. All right. So it says, know thyself in Allah, the genealogy of Jesus. Say, what? The genealogy of Jesus, life and works of Jesus in India, Europe, and Africa, in the land of Egypt. All right. Those are New Age, Aquarian Age readings, gospel book. All right. Teachings. All right. That's from the Holy Prophet. All right. That's him. Noble Drew Ali, the prophet and founder of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, to redeem the people from their sinful ways. All right, and this is Sultan Abdul Aziz Ibn Suad, the descendant of Hagar, now the head of the holy city of Mecca. All right, Hagar, who was Hagar? One of Abraham's wives, a slave or a servant he had, concubine, and I believe Ishmael came out of that. So he's a descendant of that. It says, all right, and so his book starts with, know thyself and thy father God Allah. The genealogy of Jesus, with 18 years of the events, life, and works teaching in India, Europe, and Africa. These events occurred before he was 30 years of age. These secret lessons are for all those who love Jesus and desire to know about his life, works, and teachings. So Jesus, all about Jesus, right? Now, Noble Drew Ali says the industrious acts. So let's zoom into this. All right, let me go back. It says the industrious acts of the Muslims of Northwest and Southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamites, Canaanites, who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua. What? So he's quoting Noble Drew Ali. Noble Drew Ali is letting you know that the industrious acts of the Muslims of Northwest and Southwest Africa, remember that was Maximum America, Al-Maroc, according to the Moors. These are the Moabites. So you are a Moabite, you're a Hamite and Canaanite only? What about Shem and Japheth's kids and his lineage, who were driven out of the land of Canaan, America, by Joshua? So where's Joshua's people in all this? So I thought everybody was a Moabite or a Moor. So what about Joshua's family or Quetzalcoatl's family, Jahawashi, who drove you out of Canaan? And then what happened? All these people, Moabites, Hamites, Canaanites, had to receive permission from the Pharaoh of Egypt to settle in that portion of Egypt. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms are called to this day Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. All right, these are the descendants. They became Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli. All right, Libya, North Africa. Yeah. This video with a reference here from the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary. I've actually found an original version of this in the archive.org website. All right. Again, the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary. General editor is Merrill C. Tini, Dean of the Graduate School of Theology, Wheaton College, Wheaton, Illinois. All right. Associate editor Stephen Barabbas, THD. Picture and layout editor Peter Deviser, with the assistance of 65 contributors, scholars, and experts in various fields. All right. So this is from 1963, 1964, and 1967 copies. All right. So we're in page 330. We're in the H's, right? Just wanted to start out this video with this definition so you can get a feeling of where I'm taking this. All right. So it says Ham. All right. It says the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Again, very important, right? I know that kind of confuses a lot of people, all right? But like we've been trying to say, all skin folk ain't king folk, all right? Again, Ham, he is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. All right, not the Nagas, not the Negroes, not the copper-colored races in America, but of the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. His indecency when his father lay drunken brought a curse upon Canaan. All right, I know a lot of the people fight that because they're trying to say, oh, that's just like a white man to blame the only so-called Negro, right, as the one being cursed. But again, they're telling you straight up here that Ham, he is a progenitor of dark races, but not of the Negroes, the Nagas, the Negus, the Nagas, the kings, the priest kings. He's the progenitor of the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. All right. So again, we're in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, right? And it says Canaan, Canaanite. It says here that Canaan was the son of Ham. In the genealogical list in Genesis 9:10, his descendants occupied Canaan and took their name from that country. Says Canaan was one of the old names for Palestine, the land of Canaanites disposed by the Israelites. So Canaanites were occupying Judea or Israel, the original promised land, or Canaan. Right? Israel's a nation, not a place, right? So this was basically taken over by the Israelites, or Joshua, when they kicked out the Canaanites, right? Canaanites, when they kicked out the Canaanites. The etymology of the name is unknown, as is also the earliest history of the name. But Egyptian inscriptions of 1800 BC use it for the coastline between Egypt and Asia Minor. In the Amarna letters of 1400 BC, the name is applied to the Phoenician coast. According to Judges 1:9 and 10, Canaanites dwelt throughout the land. In Genesis 12:6, 24, 3, 37, Joshua 3 and 10, the Canaanites include the whole pre-Israelite population, even east of the Jordan. The language of Canaan, in Isaiah 19:18, refers to the group of West Semitic languages of which Hebrew, Phoenician, Moabite were dialects. Moabite, Phoenician. The Canaanites were of Semitic stock and were part of the large migration of Semites, Phoenicians, Amorites, Canaanites, right? Who are these people? When they talk about Semitic, from northeast Arabia in the 3rd millennium BC, they came under Egyptian control in 1500 BC. The Israelites were never able to completely exterminate them. Many were undoubtedly absorbed by their conquerors. The continued presence rendered the religious problem of the Israelites serious and difficult. All right, man. So, who's this fella right here? Who's this suspicious fella? Who's this funny character right here? What's he doing to this person? It says shadow of the Moabite, 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 shadow of the Moabite. Look at this. Who did this? It says, by Asir, the Duke of Tears, shadow of the Moabite. Asir, the Duke of Tears, shadow of the Moabite. Look at this. It says, the Moabite nation was an ancient power in the old world that was comprised of the nations of the Hamites, Amorites, Hittites, and Canaanites. Well, thank you, Asir, for agreeing with what I'm saying. But we're not all Amorites or Hamites and Hittites and Canaanites, so how can you say we're all Moors? If that's what a Moor is, a Moabite nation. All right, altogether they were referred to as the Moabites. Altogether they referred to as the Moabites. Together, he's saying. So these people together are called the Moabites. Oh, we have a better understanding now, thanks. Who asked permission of the pharaohs, Montauk of Egypt, northwest and southwest of Maxim, to establish kingdoms. Can we settle there? If it's yours, why do you have to ask permission if it's not? If it's yours? So I thought you were here since way back. Why you gotta ask for permission? These later became known as Morocco, Hamites, all right, Hamites, Algiers, Amorites, Tunis, Hittites, and Tripolitania, Canaanites, all right? The Moors of Mauricanus, America, are the genetic remnants of the antediluvian world. Talking about the Atlanteans, this treatise gets into who these people really were as compared to who we were taught they were. Enjoy. All right, so shadow of the Moabite, 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 shadow, a shadow of the Moabite.
Ha 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 ha.
Quran, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, divinely prepared by the noble prophet Juali. So all the way ahead in this book, almost at the end, in this chapter, says the divine origin of the Asiatic nations. It says here, the fallen sons and daughters of the Asiatic nation of North America need to learn to love instead of hate and to know of his higher self and lower self. This is the uniting of the Holy Quran of Mecca, for teaching and instructing of all Moorish Americans, etc. The key of civilization was and in the hands of the Asiatic nations, the Moorish who were the ancient Moabites, Moabite, the Moorish who were the ancient Moabite, and the founders of the holy city of Mecca, the Moabites. Further down, it says Egypt, the capital empire of the dominion of Africa. It says the inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. All right, if you're in Africa, right, they're telling you straight up that those people are from the land of Canaan, meaning America. You originated in America. That's the true old world. So letting you know, Drew Ali knows the drop on that. We don't disagree on that. Now it says, but you're from the old man Cush. Cush is from Canaan, which is from Ham, a Hamite. All right, that portion of humanity. So old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan, or America. His father Ham and his family was second. His father came later. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa. You see this? The dividing of the land between the Father and the Son. You see what they're letting you know? That one portion was for Ham and the other was for Cush or Canaan. What about Shem and Japheth's people? They don't get a lot. Only Ham and Canaan get a lot. Now let me show you. So it says the dominions of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, right? And northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. So they're saying that Ham had northwest or southwest, which was America. Remember they showed us the map and the other article we saw earlier with a maxim, right? So they're saying that that part of the world was Ham and Africa and all that was Cush. So what about Shem and Japheth? Where's their lot? All right. In the later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. All right, so it says the Moabites from the land of Moab, Moabite from the land of Moab, Moab, Utah. Is that where you settled? You asked permission from Pharaoh, settled in Moab, Utah, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire. They are the true founders of the present Moroccan Empire with their Canaanites, Hittites, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. They had to take. Why were they seeking new homes again? Because Joshua had drove them out, right? From the land of Canaan, or the promised land. This was Shem's land. It wasn't the land of Canaan. He settled there when he wasn't supposed to. That wasn't his lot. That's why they had to seek new homes, because it got to the rightful owners.
All right, so I'm in this journal here. It's called the Journal for the Study of the Pseudepigrapha, or I guess pseudo apocryphal books, right? They will consider. So this is called Procopius of Caesarea in the Girgashite Diaspora. This is from the History Department in the University of Haifa in Israel. All right. It says Procopius of Caesarea reports the existence of an inscription in Numidia. All right, so this famous historian, this Greek, I believe, historian or Roman historian, all right, he has a lot of books called The History of the Wars. He writes about almost every ancient war, very famous. It's cited a lot as a primary source, all right? Even though they try to say he made up some things, he might have made up some things, but we're talking about a primary source from that time, all right? Now, Procopius reports the existence of an inscription in Numidia, all right? What does this inscription say? Allegedly written by the refugees from Canaan's conquest by Joshua. While this claim cannot be taken at face value, it raises interesting questions as to its provenance and purpose. All right, so remember they said there was no accounts of any other thing other than the Bible. So we got one inscription here in Numidia stating this, right? All right, according to Procopius. All right. All right, so before I continue with Procopius, because I just want to make sure we understand what we're reading when we're reading things from people, certain specific people. This is not Wikipedia, right? So the Encyclopedia Brittanica tells us that Procopius is a Byzantine historian, all right? Procopius, born probably between 490 and 507 in Caesarea, Palestine, now Israel, died in 565. Byzantine historian whose works are an indispensable source for his period and contain much geographical information. So when they're reading this, when we're reading this other article saying allegedly he found, so now we don't believe him, but sometimes we do. He's an indispensable source only when it fits our narrative, right? Only when it fits our narrative, then we'll say he's an indispensable source. But when he's talking about and connecting, that Joshua's kicking out certain people from Canaan, right? No, that's allegedly that they found a stone, a legend, right? Refugees from Canaan, right? But Britannica Encyclopedia right here is telling you straight up, it's an indispensable source. Look up who Procopius is. All right, I just wanted you to know. All right, just wanted you to see. Okay, let's go back. So Procopius again reports the existence of inscription in Numidia, allegedly written by the refugees of Canaan's conquest by Joshua. While this claim cannot be taken at face value, it raises interesting questions as to its provenance and purpose. Regarding provenance, the complicated situation of the sources, especially the ongoing debate about the real date of Moses of Koran, unfortunately prevents a firm conclusion. So you see, because the chronology is all messed up and they did that on purpose, things don't connect. So only because of that, but if not, they would believe it if it did connect with the chronology. All right, well, they purposely made through Moses and David and everybody BC times Joshua. They purposely did that. All right. Unfortunately, okay, so regarding purpose, the inscription seems to reflect the political and religious tensions. Political and religious tensions which accompanied Belisarius' campaign to regain North Africa for the Roman Empire and Justinian's attempt to Christianize those parts of African society who abided by their polytheistic and ancestral custom. Continuing in the article, now it says, in the fourth book of his Wars, the historian Procopius of Caesarea tells a tantalizing story about a strange inscription. By way of introduction to his description of the war waged by the Romans against the Moors. Oh, you see how we found the Moors? All right. An unhappy affair which followed Belisarius' successful North African campaign. So are we talking about, when we say Romans, are we talking about Edomites against Moabites, Canaanites? All right. Procopius gives us an excursus on Moorish antiquities. All right. He gives us an excursus, all right, of Moorish antiquities. At its heart stands the report of an inscription in Phoenician letters. There we go. What I tell you, Phoenician, they just mean Paleo-Hebrew. They found an inscription in Paleo-Hebrew in which the Moors allegedly identified themselves as the descendants of those refugees who have fled Canaan. Oh, this is correlating. Are you saying Procopius is correlating with what Noble Drew Ali is saying? Is that what you're saying? Yes, that is what you're saying. All right. Again, it alleges that the Moors identified themselves as the descendants of those refugees who had fled Canaan following the onslaught of Joshua and the Israelites. Oh, so now Joshua and the Israelites are evil. You see what they're doing, right? So you see that there's two sides of the story is what I'm trying to show you, right? I know we just get the biblical account of Joshua and just taking out the Canaanites and Jebusites and stuff. There was a reason for that, right? We know that this land was promised to Shem's descendants, not Canaan's descendants who had settled there without permission, right? So that's why there was an onslaught by Joshua and the Israelites. So this inscription that Procopius is telling us existed is telling us that they themselves identified themselves as those people who got driven out and kicked out of the land of Canaan, the promised land in America. All right, in America. All right, because Phoenicia was the land of Canaan. All right, Moors allegedly identify themselves as the descendants of those refugees who have fled Canaan following the onslaught of Joshua and Israelites. Procopius thus presents the modern historian with a highly complicated dilemma. You see, now it's a problem because now he's telling us real history, and we're like, whoa, wait, but hold up, but Procopius, but I don't. We're so confused. But they just said he's an indispensable source. Let's go back. Procopius, historian whose works are an indispensable source for his period and contain much geographical information. Encyclopedia Brittanica. All right. So now it's a complicated dilemma of source criticism. How is one to interpret a 6th century CE report of a now lost inscription? Is it lost, or did they destroy it or hide in it? Describing events which purportedly took place in the late 2nd millennium BC. Well, because chronology is messed up. They lied about chronology. It's not in that time period. My purpose in this article is twofold. First, I propose to investigate the provenance of this inscription. Did it actually exist? Did some locals offer an inventive translation for an obscure inscription Procopius had seen? Did Procopius read about the Joshua story in some book? Or did he make the whole thing up? Second, I propose to examine the inscription within the context in which it is reported, and to ask why Procopius chose to include it in his work. Alright? So they're trying to figure it out. Why did this indispensable source, this primary source, this historian, which gets cited a lot in history when they're talking about wars, why? Why did he create this dilemma? They're so confused, right? Alright, so I wanted to read to you what Procopius said, the part he's talking about. So I went straight to the book, all right? Now it's called The Wars of Justinian. So again, Procopius has a whole series of books. It's called The History of Wars, Book 1, Book 2, Book 3, Volume 1, so many volumes of the different. So this one in particular, this book, I believe is Book 3, or Book 5, I'm not exactly sure, is The Wars of Justinian. This is the Justinian part, all right? And this is translated by H.B. Dewin. All right, this is the most modern historical source translated. All right, revised and modernized with introduction notes by Anthony Cadelis. All right, The Wars of Justinian. All right, so look it up. These are in the archives too. The works is H.B. Dewin. All the volumes, except of course the one I was looking for, which I had to find separately. This is the one I found. All right, so I want to go to page 211. All right, so I start again right here. Let me just zoom in a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I'll start right here where it says, as the narration of events has now brought me to this point, it is necessary to go back and explain from where the nations of the Moors came to Libya. Where did these nations of the Moors came to Libya? How did they get to Libya? I thought they were always there. So they came to Libya and how they settled there. All right. When the Hebrews, now this is Procopius, this is his own words. When the Hebrews had left Egypt and had come near the boundaries of Palestine, Moses, a wise man who led them on the journey, died. And the leadership passed to who? To Jehoshua, Deuteronomy 34, right? The death of Moses. The power went to Jehoashi. He led the Israelites into Jerusalem with the sword, not on a donkey, right? Saying peace to everybody. He took over, assigned by Moses and Hawa, right? He took over. The son of Nun. The son of Nun, is Nun a person? Nun is the letter N in Paleo Hebrew. Nun means heir, son, continuity. Heir, the son, heir, the heir, Joshua, the heir, who led this people into Palestine, Tashdahajah, talking about the true old world, by displaying a valor in war greater than it's natural for a man. All right, he displayed so much valor in war that it was like impossible, it was like a miracle, like he was being helped, and he was being held by Hawa, the Most High, regain his land for his people. All right, by displaying valor in war greater than is natural for a man, he gained possession of the land. After overthrowing all the nations, he easily won the cities and seemed to be altogether invincible. He was invincible. They couldn't mess with Jahawashi. It's a coat, the priest king. They couldn't mess with it. He was invincible. Now, at that time, the whole country along the sea from Sidon, as far as the boundaries of Egypt, was called Phoenicia. Talking about America, all right? It was called Phoenicia. It was also called the land of Canaan, same place, right? In ancient times, one king ruled over it, as is agreed by all who have written the earliest accounts of the Phoenicians. In that country, there lived the very populous tribes, the Girgashites, the Jebusites, and some with other names by which they are called in the history of the Hebrews. All right? So you see these Phoenicians that keep getting, they're just a group of people. Two of those tribes are the Girgashites and Jebusites. We know that Joshua, right, when he got to Canaan or Jerusalem, the original Jerusalem, right, promised land, there was Jebusites there, Canaanite Jebusites there that he had to drive out, giant Jebusites. All right, so they're telling you straight up. They're telling you straight up. These are Moors. They're telling you straight up. Procopius is telling you straight up here. These were Moors. These was their land. This is who Joshua drove out. Some of the tribes. When this people then saw that the invading general was irresistible, they couldn't mess with Joshua. They emigrated from their ancestral homes and moved to Egypt. They moved to Egypt. Are we talking about Tamari? Are we just talking about just another part of America, Tamari, which adjoined their country, which was next to their country? Yes, they were. Yes, they were talking about Tamari. Tamari. Finding there no place sufficient for them to live in, given that there has been a great population in Egypt from ancient times, since there was no room there next to them, so many nations already there, right, in America, they proceeded to Libya. They established numerous cities and took possession of the whole of Libya, as far as the Pillars of Hercules, and they have lived there even up to my time, using the Phoenician tongue, straight up letting you know that these so-called Moors, right, he's saying the Moors, the nations of the Moors that were in Libya in his time, 500 AD or BC, whatever. All right, these are all Phoenicians that got driven out by Joshua. All right, another source, right, telling you straight up, these were Phoenicians, and they even spoke the Phoenician tongue or Paleo-Hebrew. We are they who fled from before the face of Joshua, the robber, the son of Nun, the robber. So now Joshua became the robber. There were also other nations settled in Libya before the Moors, who on account of having been established there from ancient times were called autochthonous, because this, they said, that Antiochus, their king who wrestled with Hercules and Clypea, was the son of the earth. So there was already people there when the so-called Phoenicians got there, right, part of North Africa. In later times, those who left from Phoenicia or America with Dido came to the inhabitants of Libya as to kinsmen, and the later willingly allowed them to found and hold Carthage. But as time went on, Carthage became a powerful and populous city. A battle took place between them and their neighbors, who, as was said, had come from Palestine before them and are called Moors today. And the Carthaginians defeated them and forced them to live far from Carthage. Later on, the Romans prevailed over all of them in war and settled the Moors at the edges of the inhabited land of Libya, making the Carthaginians and other Libyans subject and tributary to themselves. Later on, the Moors won many victories over the Vandals and gained possession of the land now called Mauritania, which extends from Cadiz to the boundaries of Caesarea, as well as most of the rest of Libya. Such then is the story of the settlement of the Moors in Libya. All right, so that was the Procopius, history on the Moors in that area. Right. These Moors, who must not be considered as a different race from the Numidians, but as a tribe belonging to the same stock, were represented by Sallust as a remnant of the army of Hercules, and by Procopius, volume 210, as the posterity of the Canaanians who fled from the robber Joshua. All right, this was a remnant of the army of Hercules. Hercules, wasn't he like half god and strong and everything? Wasn't he a Greek? All right, so these are a remnant, these Moors, they're a remnant of the army of Hercules. And by Procopius, as the posterity of Canaanians who fled from the robber Joshua. He quotes two columns with a Phoenician inscription. Procopius has been supposed to be the only, or at least the most ancient, author who mentions this inscription, and the invention of it has been attributed to himself. It occurs, however, in the history of Moses of Koran. Moses of Koran. Who is this Moses of Koran? 118, who wrote more than a century before Procopius. The same inscription is mentioned by Sudias. All right, so there's more than one reference to this inscription, who probably quotes from Procopius, according to the most of the Arabian writers, who adopted a nearly similar tradition. The indigenous inhabitants of North Africa were the people of Palestine expelled by David. Expelled by David. Oh, another people expelled by David. When they talk about people of Palestine, they mean ancient Canaan, and they're talking about America also. Expelled by David. King David, talking about city of David. Where's the city of David? Cusco, Peru? What are we talking about? Sacsayhuaman? Did he expel them from there? Is that what you mean? And they had to go settle in North Africa, right? David expelled them, who passed into Africa under the guidance of Goliath, whom they call the Jalut. Smith, 1852. They're also related to Goliath, Hercules. They're talking about giants lived in that island, Etheria, Atlanteans, the Poseidon. What are we talking about here? Huh? All right, so these Moors, all right, they're not a different race from the Numidians. All right, Numidians. Right, and again, we were talking about David expelling Goliath. David versus Goliath. Remember, a giant. David got him, so he had to bounce, I guess. And he took his people. They passed into Africa. He took his people into Africa, whom they call the Jalut. All right. Now we got this article right here online, right? And it says the role of Goliath in Moroccan Berber genealogies. All right. And this is from the Journal of North African Studies, Volume 4, 1999, Issue 2, Tribe and Society in Rural Morocco. The role of Goliath in Moroccan Berber genealogies. All right. But I have this other article which I want to read. All right. Which is this one right here. And it's from the Kalmyk Scientific Center of the Russian Academy of Sciences, published in the Russian Federation Bulletin of the Kalmyk Institute for Humanities of the Russian Academy of Sciences. All right, origin of the Berber Tribal Confederation of Sanhadja. Lecture Department of so this is from Anastasia V. Stepanova. All right. They're talking about the paper presents an analysis of the sources on the medieval history of the Maghreb in an attempt to identify the origin of the Berber Tribal Confederation of Sanhadja. All right. Now on page 3 of this, real quick, we're going to go and see. Actually, page 4. All right. So it says Sanhadja territory. It says the Berbers. Now, let me zoom into this. You guys can read it better. All right, so it says the Berbers are perhaps descendants of the ancient Numidians, whose country they now occupy. Their different tribes are scattered over the whole North Africa, intervening between the shores of the Atlantic and the confines of Egypt. Our accounts of this people are based on the works of Leo, Africanus, and Arab Islamic authors. Al-Idrisi, who wrote in the middle of the 12th century AD, gave a wide description of the Berber tribes and the territories they occupied. Their original country was Palestine. All right, so remember, they're talking about ancient Canaan, and that was in America. All right, and their king was Goliath. Their king was Goliath. They're related to the Goliath, yes, the one in the Bible that David fought, a giant. They're related to the Berbers, like we just read. All right, the Jalut, son of Daris, son of Diana, who was the ancestor of Sanata of the west, and Diana was the son of Liwa, son of Bar, son of Kay, son of Elias, son of Mudar. Mudar, remember that meant language? When Daud, the peace be upon him, slew Goliath the Berber, he slew Goliath the Berber. The Berbers migrated westward till they reached the extreme limits of the Maghreb. Then they split up there into tribes as to Masata, Mugila, in Darisa. They settled in the mountains. As to Lawata, they settled in the land of Cyrenaica, Barca, and a group of Hawara settled in the mountains of Nafusa. The rest of them settled in the land of extreme Maghrib and the tribes of Masmuda with them. Then they together civilized that country, and the Berber tribes are the following. Pay attention. The Sanata, the Darisa, the Mugila, Mukadar, the Banu Abd Rabi'in, the Waraf Dujun, Nafsa, the Nafsawa, the Matmata, the Lamta, the Samhaja, the Hawara, Kutama, the Lawata, the Masata, Sadrata, Joslasam, the Madiuna, Sabuju. I'm probably murdering these names, but bear with me. The Madasa, the Kalima, Urba, Hatita, Walita, the Banu, the Manhus, the Banu, Samjun, the Banu Warslang, the Banu Jazdaran, the Banu Siriji, the Wardasa, the Warhun, and the other Berber tribes, from those whom we shall mention through the power of Allah in connection with cultivated parts of their land. Alright, so you see, all those Berber tribes were descended from Goliath, and they were, removed from the Holy Land by David. So not only Joshua, right, took their ancestors out, but also David, because there was still some there. David had to do the same. And this is the true old world. Of course, they were still there. They were all around. Not all of them left or bounced, Alright, so just continuing with this topic of these migrations and these people settling in North America. Who were these people? These first Libyans, these first North Africans. I got this in this book, History of the Moors of Spain, is the book, translated from the French original of Jean-Pierre Claris by M. Florian, to which is added a brief notice of Islamism. Alright, this is from 1860. Alright, 1860. And we're in the very first part or chapter of this book. It's called The History of the Moors of Spain again, first epic. The conquest of the Arabs or Moors, extended from the end of 6th century to the middle of the English. Now it says the primitive Moors were the inhabitants of the vast portion of Africa, bounded on the east by Egypt, on the north by the Mediterranean, and on the west by the Atlantic, and on the south by the deserts of Barbary. The origin of the Moors or Mauritanians is like that of most other ancient nations, obscure. They don't know, or they say they don't know, right? And in the information we possess concerning their early history, confusedly mingled with fables, alright? They don't know where they came from, but we are correlating, right? They came from ancient Canaan. They're talking about America, right? So let's see what they're saying here. It says, the fact, however, appears to be established that Asiatic immigrations were, from the earliest times, made into Africa. We know that, right? In addition to this, the historians of remote ages speak of certain Melek Jarfrik, king of Arabia, Felix, who conducted a people called Sabai into Libya, made himself master of that country, established his followers there, and gave it the name of Africa. It is from these Sabians or Sabaean that the principal Moorish tribes pretend to trace their descent. The derivation of the name Moors is also supposed in some degree to confirm the impression that they came originally from Asia. But without enlarging upon these ancient statements, let it suffice to say that nearly certain grounds exist for the belief that the original Moors were Arabians. The original Moors were Arabians. And if we follow Arabians, most of them come from Ishmaelites, a son of Abraham, right? But not, not related to Isaac. I mean, that's his brother, but not from the Isaac line. Alright? In confirmation of this impression, we find that during every period of the existence of their race, the descendants of the primitive inhabitants of Mauritania have, like the Arabs, been divided into distinct tribes, and like them have pursued a wild and wandering mode of existence. The Moors of Africa are known in ancient history under the name of Nomades, Numidae. So remember the Numidians, Getule and Masili, The Numidians came from Goliath, right? We just read that Goliath. All right. So again, the Moors of Africa are known in ancient history under the name of nomads, travelers, nomads, nomades, Numidae or Numidians, right? Remember Goliath? He brought his people over to Africa. They became known as the Numidians. Goliath was a Berber ancestor. These were people that got kicked out by David from Canaan, America. David, Prester John. I'm talking about Prester John, so-called. They were by turns the subjects, the enemies, or the allies of the Carthaginians. All right, Carthaginians. And I'm seeing a lot of correlation to Carthaginians being in America. Alright? And with them they fell under the dominion of the Romans. After several unsuccessful revolts to which they were instigated by their fiery, restless, and inconstant temper, the Moors were at length subjugated by the Vandals, AD 427. Alright, so I just wanted to read this part from this book again, The History of the Moors of Spain. Alright, just want to show you that, they're also correlating that, these people might immigrated there and that they might be from when they're saying Asia, they're talking about the promised land, Canaan. Alright, and again, they're Numidians. Alright, Numidians, Berber genealogy, Goliath. Again, fits the same story of King David fighting Goliath and expelling them. And you see, he brought his whole people over here, just like people in ancient times with Joshua. They had to flee, right? They flee because the robber Joshua took them out of there, expelled them, right? So they had to go find new lands. They were seeking new homes. All right, you see how it's correlating, right? So let's go back to the other article. All right, so we continue. And now I'm in this book is the Encyclopedia Brittanica, a dictionary of arts, sciences, literature, and general information. This is the 11th edition, volume 18, metal to mumps. All right, the words in between those. This is from 1911, University Press, Cambridge. And we're on page 812 of this book. All right, Moors. We get to the word Moors. It's right here, Moors, and we're going to zoom in. And it says here, Moors. It says Latin Mori, Greek Malpoi, or my boy, dark man. The name which, as at present used, is loosely applied to any native of Morocco. Alright? A native of Morocco, not America. But in its stricter sense, only to the townsmen of mixed descent. In this sense, it is also used of the Mohammedan townsmen in the other Barbary states. Alright? It has been by some connected with the Hebrew and Phoenician Mahur, Western. Moors of Western. Wettstein derives it from Mahir, a corruption of Amasir, with its plurals Imasir and Mazir, archaic forms of the Berber native name Amasi, the free. From Mori, the classic name for the northwestern African tribes, the northwestern district of that continent, came to be called by the Romans Mauritania. Right, Mauritania. We already learned, right? We read where they were coming from. All right, going back all the way to those people related to the Goliath, right? The term Moors, listen to this, has no real ethnological value. Again, the term Moors, in parentheses, has no real ethnological value. The tribes known to the Romans by that name were undoubtedly of Berber stock. Again, the tribes known to the Romans by that name, anybody known as Moors, they were of Berber stock, and we already got where the Berbers came from, right? David expelled them. They first appeared in history at the time of the Yugoslav War. They just appeared, right? 110, 107 BC, it says, when Mauritania west of the Molusha was under the government of a king called Bacchus, and appears to have constituted a regular and organized state. It retained its independence till the time of Augustus, who in 25 BC bestowed the sovereignty of the previously existing kingdom upon Juba II, king of Numidia, and the Numidians, at the same time uniting it with the western portion of Numidia, from the Molucca to the Mumps saga, which received the name of Mauritania Caseriensis, while the province that had previously constituted the kingdom, or Mauritania proper, came to be known as Mauritania Tingitana. See Mauritania. With the rest of North Africa, Mauritania was overrun by the Arabs in the 7th century. The subsequent conquest of Spain was affected chiefly by Berber tribes, but the Muslims in the peninsula, known to the Christian nations as Moors, the Muslims in the peninsula as Moors, always had a strong strain of Arab blood, the Arabs, and in most respects became Arabized. The race was also influenced considerably by intermarriage with the natives of Spain, and when the Moors were finally expelled from that country, they had become almost entirely distinct from their Berber kinsfolk, to whom they were known as Andalusians. Andalusia, right? Where Columbus left from. Andalusia.
Alright, we're in the Holy Koran of the Moorish Holy Science Temple, divinely prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali. Alright, and again, know thyself in Allah, the genealogy of Jesus, life and works of Jesus in India. What India? Europe and Africa, in the land of Egypt. Which one? Tamari? Down here, the industrious acts of the Muslims of the northwest and southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamathites, Canaanites, who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua, Jahawashi, Quetzalcoatl. We ain't talking about Bible stories here. We're talking about real life. All right, we're talking about real life. We're gonna show you that Moabites did exist. We got stones that talk about the Moabites, proof, archaeological proof. All right, so Canaan. Where's Canaan? Canada, Canaan, promised land, right? That's here in America, the true old world. So what happened? These Moabites, Hamites, Canaanites, who were driven out of the land of Canaan by who? Jahawashi. So is Joshua or Jahawashi a Moabite too? Or Canaanite? Is he? What about his people, his nation? His nation? What about his nation as defined by Black's Law Dictionary? Since you guys pointed out. Nation. What is his nation? Who are we talking about? What's his real name? We know we're not talking about Bible stories. We're talking real life, real history, real people. We're not talking about descriptive terms. We ain't talking about descriptive terms. Right? And then they had to what? Receive permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle in that portion of Egypt, in that portion of Tamari, in that portion of Tamari. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms are called to this day Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. All right, etc. So Drew Ali's telling you straight up. When did Drew Ali say anything about being dark-skinned? He just said, don't call yourself those things, but he's telling you straight up, these are the Moabites, Hamites, Canaanites who were driven out of the land of Canaan. Got the King James Bible of 1611. I got an original scanned copy here. Canaan and his descendants, right? Canaan, remember you're the ancient Canaanites, Sidonians, these are Phoenicians, right? Canaanites, Hittites, Jebusites. When Joshua got to the Holy Land or Jerusalem, he had to kick out the Jebusites. These are Canaanites in the Bible story, right? And then we got the Amorites. All these people, right? All these nations actually had a confederate. They made a confederate, right? All right, so yeah, those who not into this whole thing, you can just tune out if you want right now.
But history is history. This ain't Bible stories. So they said, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. Who? Against who? Against Israel. Check it out. They said, they have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted against thy hidden ones. The hidden ones, yo, Big Judah, much love to Big Judah. Breaking this down. Who are the hidden ones? Who was in America? They couldn't pass and cross over. Who was the hidden ones? Before they got to America, who was the hidden ones? Who was the hidden ones, bro? Talking about you. You over here in America, you were hitting over here. They said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation. Yo, let's cut them off from being a nation. Let's tell them they're African. Let's tell them they're Negroes. Let's tell them they're colored people. Let's take their tribal name, their nation name away. That the name of Israel, or the tribes of the sons of Jacob, 12 tribes, may be no more in remembrance. Israel's not a place. It's a people, it's a nation, it's a specific family. Let's cut them off from being a nation. They consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom. Who's Edom? That's Esau's son. He married a Canaanite, right? Remember, Esau didn't get the inheritance. Jacob got it. Right? Jacob, after Jacob is Israelites. Even though Esau and Edom are Hebrews, that doesn't make them Israelites. All right? And who else? The Ishmaelites. Talking about Arabs, the Ishmaelites. Talking about descendants of Hagar, concubine of Abraham, of Moab, Moabite of Moab, Ishmaelites of Moab, Ishmaelites in Moab, Moabites, and the Hagarinis, same people, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, all these people. I can show you where they came from, who they come from. All right. The Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Philistines, these are all Canaanites. Tyre, Assur, who was actually Shem's son, also joined with them. He sold out. Yo, he also joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot. All right, so even Assur. All right, let me show you that. Let me go back to that Bible. So, oh, we got Ham here. Oh, what did I say? Philistine, right? Philistine right here. Philistine. You understand who these nations are. You got to try to put it in a historical perspective. I know that you think this is a story, and we probably had different names for them here in America, but in the Bible, this is what they're called, right? All right, this is what they're called in the Bible. And the Chaldeans. All right, so Drew Ali said, you're the ancient Canaanites, Hamites, Moabites. All right, and these same people did a confederate against a nation so they can erase their name. They made a confederate against thy hidden ones, against the ones that were hidden in America, thy hidden ones. You gotta try to read between the lines here. All right. So we all Moors. Drew Ali already broke it down. The industrious acts of the Muslims of Northwest and Southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamites, Canaanites who were driven out of the land of Canaan, America, by Joshua, Jahawashi. He's from Shem, right? He is an Israelite, right, in the Bible, like. So that the name of Israel may be no more remembered. Let us cut them off from being a nation. Let us cut them off from being a nation, yo. Think all this is coincidence and just a story? That's what you think, right? Now this inscription, the royal Moabite inscription, says, though only part of this Moabite inscription has survived, the remaining text suggests that it belonged to an inscribed stone slab that recorded the victories of Moabite king. Listen, the victories of a Moabite king The inscription records the king's building projects and boasts of his victory over the Ammonites, reflecting the tension between the two nations. All right. So in this account, they're talking about them beefing with Ammonites, but New World Encyclopedia, Mesha Stele. All right. You think it's just Bible stories. The Mesha Stele, also known as the Moabite, a confederate they made, the Ishmaelites of Moab. The Ishmaelites of Moab is a black basalt monument bearing an inscription by the 9th century BC Moabite king Mesha, discovered in 1868 at Dijon, Jordan, the biblical Dibon, the capital of Moab. Dodge the hijack. We got Moab, Utah. Deuteronomy 34 is all over Utah. All the places in that verse are in Utah. All the towns and cities they name, the description of the valleys and the mountains, it's all there. Check out Moses in America, my video if you haven't. It says that the inscription of 34 lines is the most extensive document ever recovered, referring contemporaneously to ancient Israel. Again, the inscription of 34 lines is the most extensive document ever recorded, referring contemporaneously to ancient Israel. So I thought it was just a Bible story. And do you know what this is? Okay, so let's keep reading. It'll tell us probably. The stele was erected by Mesha circa 850 BC as a memorial of his victories, especially his revolt against the kingdom of Israel. Against the kingdom of Israel. Moabites. Moabite Stone. One union. Moabites. So we're all Moabites? But then you're telling me that Joshua drove you out. So how are we all Moabites? You understand what I'm showing you and telling you? So again, right? Joshua drove you out, right? So there is a history here of Moabites having beef with the kingdom of Israel. This is a real archaeological stele. You can't say nothing about this. You can't dispute this. So again, his revolt against the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of the 12 tribes, these tribes, the Moabite Stone also is Paleo-Hebrew. Same writing. This is a bad image, but let's go back. It says that this basically commemorates his victories, especially his revolt against the kingdom of Israel, the Moabite king Mesha, apparently undertaken after his death of Israel's king Ahab. Currently displayed at the Louvre Museum in Paris, it is 124 centimeters high and rounded at the top. The monument was discovered in August 1868 by Reverend F.A. Klein, a German missionary to Jerusalem. The inscription is remarkable not only for its confirmation of several biblical events and personalities, but also in that it provides important insights into the religion of Israel's neighbor Moab. Israel's neighbor Moab. Again, they made a tabernacle. They consulted together. What? They said, let us cut them off from being a nation, so the name of Israel may no more be more in remembrance. Who did that? The Ishmaelites of Moab, Edom, the Hagarinis, Gebal, the Ammonites, Amalekites, the Philistines. Ashur also joined them. The Assyrians also joined them. Their neighbor Moab. And the existence of a previously unknown Israelite shrine in Moabite territory. It also contains the earliest known reference to the Hebrew god Yahweh. Oh, dodge the hijack. This is only from 1869. That's when they first created this word. So what are you talking about? That's what it says in the Bible. Hypothetical reconstruction of the tetragrammation JHWH. Now, just put A's in between all this. What do you get? You get Yahweh. Yahweh. Just like the Lakota Sioux people call the Most High. And James Adair broke down in his book, right? Based on the assumption that the tetragrammation is the imperfective of Hebrew verb Hawa, which is an earlier form of Heya. He was, in the sense of the one who is the existent. Hawa. So it says, with very few variations, the Moabite language of the inscription shares in common with an early form of Hebrew. All right. So Moabite spoke a version or early form of Hebrew. All right. Now this is history. All right. This is Paleo Hebrew they found here. All right. This has nothing to do with the Bible. You can't come with that hijack right now. Talking about, oh, that's just a Bible story. No, we're talking about real archaeology here. Also known as Biblical Hebrew, is apparently an offshoot of the Canaanite language, an offshoot of the Canaanite language commonly used between the 14th to 8th centuries BC in Syria and Palestine. The form of the letter supplies important information regarding the history of the formation of the alphabet, as well as incidentally the arts of civilized life of those times in the land of Moab. Talking about Utah, Moab, Utah. Again, this is the Royal Moabite inscription. There's a whole different archaeological artifact, right? Who also talks about Moabites, and it's also written in Paleo Hebrew. All right, same one from those Luna Stone, right? Those Luna Stone. All right, so I just wanted to show that, you know, Moabite. If you want to go into that, these you know, Drew Ali was very clear, right? The industrious acts of the Muslims of Northwest and Southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamites, Canaanites who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua. Talking about Quetzalcoatl, the plum serpent. We're talking about the plum serpent. We ain't talking about religions here. We ain't talking about religions here. You're not overstanding. You're just going with your own. You're mad. You know, you're like confusing yourself because nobody's talking about religions here. Scholars identify biblical King Balak on the Mesha Stele, the Moabite Stone, one of the most exceptional biblical archaeology artifacts ever found. The 3-foot-tall Mesha Stele contains a 34-line inscription celebrating a Moabite vassal King Mesha's rebellion against the Israelites. Oh, but it's just Bible and religions to you, right? And nobody's telling you to worship anybody. But if you're indigenous, you were a spiritual person and you did honor the Great Spirit. And that's what we're talking about. There is no separation. There's only one truth. So if Moabites exist, and Drew Ali's telling you they're Moabites, and I'm showing you Moabites, Canaanites, this means something.